There we go. I did that all by myself the first time. Okay, just one moment while I get my screen share back up. And I think we're ready to go. Okay, can you all see the screen share?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I just have to move this one thing off. Thanks again for being here. I'm Mary Stoner Saunders. I've been with Common Cause for almost 3 months, but I have a lifetime of really caring about good government and our democracy and how important it is for us to do what we can to make that happen. So I really appreciate you all being here. I think we can get through this training in less than an hour. And I want you to feel free to raise your hand or do a chat question or whatever as I go through this, but there'll be plenty of time at the end to ask questions as well. The training overall, we want you to just have a sense about what the election protection program is, what the roles and responsibilities of the poll monitors that you will, that you're training for, and then expose you to some of the frequently asked questions or common scenarios that you may encounter when you're out there in the field. And again, if I don't cover anything with the slides, we'll have plenty of time for question and answer. But if what I'm saying doesn't make sense, feel free in the small group to interrupt. And I also want to say that there's going to be a couple of parts of this that may be a little redundant, but that's kind of on purpose just to make sure it gets absorbed. I switched to the second slide, but I should just say real quickly that in case you don't know, but I think you do because I believe you're all members of Common Cause or on the listserv. This Common Cause was founded in the early 70s in the wake of the Watergate scandal and crisis to make sure that government remains transparent. We hold our democracy accountable to the people. And right now we've got about, in addition to the national headquarters, which we work very closely with on a number of levels, there's 30 state chapters, including Illinois. And as you can imagine, each state's different. Even though we're in Chicago, we still have a lot to defend and protect right now, but we're not quite the same as what's happening in Arizona or Texas. So we really love to hear from the people who are part of Common Cause to help us with our agenda. And part of this election protection program is that. We've got 4 different pillars. We have the election protection program, we have media and democracy, we have campaign finance, and then we have holding government accountable and transparent. But today we're doing election protection, and this is a core part of all the work that we do. Okay, so this is a little bit left over from the actual municipal election on the 28th, but it's still very relevant to the runoff happening now. And again, this isn't a national election, so why does it matter? Well, first of all, we've had a historic number of aldermanic seats, which means a lot more increased competition. As you know, we've got 14 aldermanic seats still up for grabs, and these are pretty intense campaigns that are happening. Unfortunately, right now in Chicago, we've also got a relatively low turnout, and that just means that people are really competitive vying for those votes, and it may lead to some aggressive electioneering. We want to keep our eyes on that. It also means that each vote is really, really valuable to the candidates, and we want to make sure, as always, each vote counts. And anybody who wants to vote can vote if they're an eligible voter. Also, as you probably know, this is the year we've had new ward maps, we've had consolidation of polling places. And so there's a lot of people who you may encounter on election day who are a little bit confused about where they should go. We found that on the 28th for the general election, that a lot of people needed some guidance about where they were eligible to vote. We don't have to worry about the new police council because that is already settled and done. And then the last thing why it matters is, there's a lot of disinformation out there. I know one candidate had somebody send out texts about where the polling place was in the wrong place. Another one sent out false text messages about their opponent. So the point is, it's just really great to have people on the ground to make sure that people aren't hearing things that just aren't true or accurate, no matter what the motivation is. So did we already do this one? So here we go with the training goals. What is election protection? What is your role? The common questions that you may encounter, what to do if you need to escalate a situation, and then who to ask for help. So quick election protection vocabulary. Election protection is this national and local effort. It has multiple partners across the country to make sure every eligible voter can vote who wants to vote. And this will be including the 800 number, which I don't know, Julia, if that's what you were working on as a volunteer before, but it's staffed with trained volunteers and attorneys who are expert in the local election laws, that if somebody who's on the ground and a monitor can't answer, or if it seems like there needs to be a higher level of intervention, is available throughout election day. Poll monitors are what you guys are going to be. And we have two kinds, and they are roving, which means they go and are assigned maybe 5 different polling places and drive or bike ride or whatever to the different ones to make sure everything looks good. Or single site, where you get assigned to one polling place and you stay there for as long as your shift. Oh, thanks, Julia. The next is the poll workers and election judges. I got a little confused about this the first time I volunteered. So the monitors are different than the workers. The workers and the judges are actually paid by the election board to work. And they have very, very specific duties. They're there for the whole day. So we are an addendum or an augmentation to that kind of work, to make sure we are there on the ground to help voters and to be the eyes and ears to see if anything needs to be addressed. And then the command center is a very fancy way of saying Jay and me. I'm at our office, downtown Chicago, Common Cause, Illinois. We will be on call all day to answer questions that you may have, either by calling us or by entering it in the online reporting mechanism, which I'm going to show you about in just a second. So are we good to keep going? Any questions? Okey-doke. So I just explained this pretty much already, that it's the largest nonpartisan voter protection program. There's over 100 organizations, and there's literally thousands of people across the country doing this work. In addition to making sure eligible voters can vote, we also want to identify real issues on the ground that we may be able to inform policy or advocacy efforts in the future. For instance, in Chicago, they are in the process of getting up to code on access for disabled voters. Because of the old infrastructure, there's a lot of facilities that really don't serve disabled voters well. But what we found at the last election is that several locations that should have been able to be accessible weren't. They didn't have signs in the right place, or the door with the ramp was locked and no one had a key. We want to know about those things too, even if it's not about a single voter, because then when we communicate with the Board of Elections, we can really follow up. So next election, that's not a problem. And at this election, if there's a way we can intervene and help that voter, we can. As I mentioned before, we have this hotline. So if ever you are troubleshooting and you feel like, you don't know the answer, and for some reason I can't pick up the phone, or if a voter doesn't want to talk to you directly, or if there's a language that you can't accommodate, we have multiple languages available throughout election day for people to get the answers and help that they need. So the next thing we're going to go over real quick is the poll monitor roles and responsibilities. As I just mentioned, there's the roving, which goes to multiple locations. You're going to look on the outside of the polling location, not be on the inside, but make sure sign is where they're supposed to be, that people aren't electioneering, that it's open when it's supposed to be open, that there aren't long lines. Things like that we'll go over more in a minute. Whereas the single, you'll generally look outside when you first arrive, but then you'll go inside to make sure that the flow of events, that everything seems to be moving okay. And that if there's any dispute between a voter and the election judge, that you're there to monitor that and to document that. And if necessary, contact us so we can troubleshoot if there needs to be some kind of follow-up. We do have social media monitors, and that's something to keep in mind in the future. We're not going to be doing it this election, but it's a really critical thing. As you know, that there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially on social media, some of it unintentional and some of it very much by design. So if you are one of those social media people who like to get on Twitter or on Instagram and to sort of track what's going on, something to consider in the future from the comfort of your own home or office. And just note that the eligibility to be one of these roles is you are an Illinois resident. You don't have to live in Chicago for tomorrow, for April 4th election, and that you're a registered voter. Okay, so going over again, like I said, it'll be a little bit repetitive, but hopefully it'll help everything sink in. One of the biggest roles you'll do, and maybe one of the most gratifying, is just assisting voters. You want to make sure they know their rights. Some of those rights may be about what kind of ID they need, or if they had a vote by mail ballot, like how they can use that if they're coming to the polling place that day. So you're there to answer those questions. You can help them by checking on their status if there's some confusion. I know I went in to vote on the 28th. Nothing about me had changed, and the poll worker could not find me for about 10 minutes just because of whatever technical difficulty. So if you're there and somebody's being told they're not registered, rather than that person giving up and going away, you can be there on site to help confirm that they are in fact registered and give them the information they need. I'll go over some of the answers to these types of issues in just a minute. You also may want to report that there's systemic issues at the center. Let's say the polling machines are breaking down, or they don't have pens, or somebody can't get in because of, like I said, they don't have wheelchair access. This is going to be really great information that you'll be collecting so that we can either fix it in the moment or troubleshoot it for the future when we talk with the Board of Education. Here's a list I like to do because I don't ever want to get into trouble. And it's what you may not do. So the first thing is, if you're going into a polling place, you're going to have to present a credential. They don't have this in Wisconsin or Milwaukee, but in Chicago, you're going to have a physical credential that we've arranged to get from the Board of Elections. We can figure out how to get those to you after this training, but you will be arriving with a credential that says you were trained by Common Cause and you're a nonpartisan poll observer. Just a quick aside, you can have partisan poll observers, and in some states they've been weaponized to try to go and intimidate people when they vote, honestly. But for the most part, nonpartisan and even partisan poll workers are there to observe, not to interfere, and usually that's just what happens. You are not supposed to speak to voters inside a polling place or within the 100 feet of where there's an electioneering free zone. The design of that is to make sure nobody is approaching a polling place or is in a polling place and feels pressured or intimidated by anyone about how they should vote. So because of that, you're not allowed to talk to a voter. However, if you saw a voter experience a dispute and is going away without voting or without their problem being resolved, you are allowed to follow them out. And then once you get past that 100-foot electioneering zone, say, excuse me, would you like any help? I saw maybe you weren't able to vote, and if there's anything I can do to help, I'm a nonpartisan trained poll monitor, and you're allowed to talk to them outside. You're never, ever, ever, ever allowed to electioneer. No matter what you feel, how passionate you are about a candidate, that stays between you and your own vote. And we have to stay nonpartisan is really important. You're also not supposed to touch materials or handle materials that are partisan in nature. So you might have a very friendly campaign volunteer who's like, oh, Linda, here, check out my candidate. He's awesome. You say, no, thank you. I'm a nonpartisan poll monitor. No matter how much you like them, you don't want to hold on to those materials. And then also, I think I don't have to say this, but you're not to be disorderly or disruptive. Even if somebody really gets under your skin, even if they are just, makes you angry or you think they're wrong, you have to step back, take a breath, call us, call the 866 number if you think it's a real issue, but do not engage. And then finally, the film, and you can kind of not see it at the bottom of the screen, but you can film and photograph outside, but you cannot do that inside. In fact, right now, there's some legislation considering whether people should be able to photograph inside. But the reason right now that you can't is they don't want people to be intimidated or votes to be sold or anything like that to happen by documenting what's happening in the sacred space of the polling place. However, if you feel safe and comfortable, it is great to take photographs outside because you can show, look, this door says, it has disability access, but it's locked. Or you can show, see, these signs are not sufficient for people to know this is where they can vote. Or if you felt safe, you might take a photograph of somebody who is electioneering where they shouldn't, so that we can get back and make that stop happening. So no voting inside, no photographing or recording inside, but you can outside. Okay, so here again, a little redundant, but we're going to just keep going and happy to answer any questions when we get to the scenario planning. So a lot of questions are like ID requirements, right? You don't have to have ID at all if you are registered and you're in the right place. All of that ID was satisfied before you registered. If you want to change something or register on site, you will need ID, and I'll provide you with the links to where you can verify that so you don't have to memorize it. You'll have that both in an email I'm going to give you, and you're going to have this a little later on the slideshow, and you'll also have the slideshow to refer to. It's the same thing about the polling location. A lot of people come to where they've been going for years and now it's been moved. So there's an easy way that you can check that, which I'll show you in a minute. And the same thing with the registration status. Like I said, somebody was saying I wasn't registered because they didn't understand my last name. They got a little flustered. They were about to give up. And then finally their supervisor found it. But you can be the person to help too outside by looking up their name on the very easy to use Board of Elections website. And then also questions about absentee ballot. I received my absentee ballot, but I decided I wanted to come in and vote today. And there's rules around that. You have to either hand in the ballot that you had so that they know there's not a duplicate voting, or if you don't have the mail-in ballot, you can do a provisional vote and then show up later at the Board of Elections to verify that you have not voted twice. And again, don't worry, we'll go over this another time, and you're going to have links to everything so you'll have it in real time when you need it. A big problem, believe it or not, is pens. A lot of time they polling places, they run out of pens kind of like this, and they end up using Sharpies. And the reason that becomes a problem is Sharpies tend to bleed through a paper, so somebody might be able to see how they voted. So if you are hearing that there's a problem with pens on the outside or you're inside and you know that, call us. Our fearless executive director, Jay Young, has been known to drive pens to polling places when this happens. So it could be something like that. It could be that it hasn't opened. You get there for the beginning of the shift and it's closed. We want to know as soon as possible, because that is just not okay. And we have to make sure that gets corrected as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to be a problem on April 4th because of the turnout, but you never know. If there's really long lines, if there's lines over 15, 30 minutes for people to vote, we want to know to make sure that everything is being done to move voters through and that we're not losing people to the line who want to vote. Another thing, like I said, is electioneering. Some of it is perfectly innocent. The volunteer doesn't know they can't follow the person up to the door, but we really don't want people electioneering, intimidating voters in any way. And then again, as I mentioned, the accessibility problems. This is something that, again, Chicago's working to come in compliance with. Each voting polling place is graded on how much in compliance they are. But given it's this infrastructure problem, it's taking several years to bring people to compliance. Everybody who is not able to access the polling place, they can have a curbside voting, which means that the election judge can come to the car and take that person's vote manually, and then they get it approved when they go back into the polling place. Everybody has a right to do that. So it's something you should be aware of. Okay, we kind of went over this, but just, the single site monitors, you remain in the same place. You note what happens outside, then you're inside, usually on a metal chair under the fluorescent lights in the gymnasium or wherever the polling place is. But one of the positive things about being there is you really are there for a while to sort of see how things are running more than just a quick snapshot. So you can see if there's a recurring theme. So for instance, if one person is having difficulty finding out if they're registered at a polling place, but all of a sudden you're finding out this is like 5 people are having problems verifying that they're registered, that may be something that you say, I'm going to call Mary or Jay, or I'm going to call the 866 number just to make sure something's not going on. Is there a real issue with this particular polling place, or is it a coincidence? But we want to know if there's any sort of patterns happening. And by being at one site, you're better able to identify if that's the case. The roving monitors are great, not just because you don't have to sit on a metal chair. Sorry, I sat on a metal chair for 14 hours the first time I volunteered. So no, it was a beautiful experience. And I'm really glad that I did it. But what's great about being a roving is it's really just taking a pulse, a check to make sure that from the outside, everything is in place. Is it open? Are the signs good? Can we improve the signs so people don't miss the polling place? Are the signs that say this is where electioneering must stop, are those clear? Are people, the volunteers, are they acting in accordance to the rules and regulations? So it's really good that we get sort of, we don't have as many volunteers as we have polling places. So someone who's able to move around to multiple polling places, it's a good way for us to know that everything is looking in order, whatever part of the day that it is. I'll be going over this in a minute too, but you're going to get to choose how long you volunteer. If it's 2 hours, awesome. You can go all the way up to 12 hours. You can schedule how long you want to do in 2-hour increments. So being a roving monitor, each of the 4 or 5 polling places will be expected to be done in a 2-hour increment. So that's how that works. Any questions? No? Awesome. Okay. So now we're in this section that is.
Actually, I have a couple questions from what you've covered so far. So this credentialing, do you wear a tag so people know that you are who you are, or you're just carrying it with you?
You carry it with you. And I should actually confirm, because I haven't had one before, but my understanding is you carry it with you. And when you check into your polling place, hand it to the judge.
So people that are there don't necessarily know what your role is.
Well, I mean, yeah. So what we're gonna get to you is when I'm sorry I don't have it to show you today because I was out of town, so I'm not in the office. But we have buttons and shirts and hats that say nonpartisan election volunteer. Okay.
So you don't need a tag. I got that. And then another question I have is, will we get these in use? We can refer back to all this. We'll get this written in a package, or?
Yes. Okay. So after this training, I will send you an email that has listed out all of these things and links that you can go to review again or put on your phone. And then I also will be sending you this slideshow, and all these blue things mean that it's linked, so you can click and go to that site as well.
Okay.
So these are all pretty user-friendly stuff. They try to make it as simple as possible. So like I just said, we're going to send you and then I also have a resource guide on top of the email that you can hold in your hand if you don't like to go online with your phone, that answers all of these questions, so you can go with a printed copy if you're more comfortable with that.
Okay.
Links. So you're going to get the resource guide, you're going to get the slideshow, you're going to get my very long email, and you're going to get all of these will have the links for you to look up. There's a couple of things you are going to have to do online, and I'm going to show you.
That's fine.
Quick.
Okay.
So the first thing is just to show you quick here. This is the voter, the Board of Election Commission. It's really user friendly. You can go in there to put in the house address, which will show you where the polling place should be with that address. Then there's all these other ones about early voting, or about if you're looking up vote by mail policy, or what IDs you need, or your voter information if you're registered. So it's a pretty user-friendly site that not all of the Chicago citizens and voters know about, but you know about. And once they're connected to that, they can answer pretty much any question that they may have. The other thing we're going to go to is called the Find My Shift app. And you're going to have to go in with your email and a password that you'll set up. And then once you do that, then you'll be able to schedule your shifts that you want based on what zip code you want to be in. And they will give you choices of which polling places you want to go. Or if you are roving, they will give you choices of the group that you want to go to, so you don't have to put that together. Then the next thing that we're going to have you do is, when you're there, this is Jot form. And it's a really simple form that you go in with your name and you put in your polling location. You don't even have to like do it the whole way. Oh, I'm going to be at Murray Language Academy. It comes up, I go next. And then I start going through a checklist that it has for me to fill out, which I'll show you more in just a sec. And then finally, just what we were talking about, Linda, is you can have as much or as little swag as you want. So then when you're out there, like I don't wear baseball caps, but some people love them. If you want a baseball cap, if you want a shirt, if you want to just like do the whole thing and have all the swag, that's awesome. We even have swag masks to keep you safe if you're indoors and want to wear that. And we have swag election protection hand sanitizer. So we'll get you all set up. All right, so I just went through this. You're going to receive an email with all of this stuff. Just went through this about your credentials you got to have. We'll talk about how we're going to get them to you again in a second. We're going to have the swag. And you can email me or call whenever, if anything happens and you have to cancel your shift, just so we know that it's not covered. So I was just going through a minute ago about finding your shifts. So once you start your account and find your shift, which is just your name, and you give yourself a password, you're going to go to, let me see if I have it up here. Sorry, there we go. Find your shift. I'm a little special. You're going to go to the shift map. And you're going to put, instead of Chicago, you can put your zip code. Okay. So my zip code is 60615. If anybody knows what neighborhood that is, you get a prize. I want to be English because unfortunately I don't speak other languages, but don't forget you got the 866 number if you encounter someone who speaks another language that you don't, and there's always help just a phone call away. I'm going to choose here. I want to be a single, no, I'm going to do roving right now because it's a little more complicated. So I'm going to be roving. And unfortunately, you do have to put in the day of the election. So that's April 4th, because there's early voting, but we're just really doing the volunteer on election day. I don't have to worry about the time because it's going to show me all of it. And then I do search. And then I'm seeing with these things, these are where I can do roving shifts. And sorry, got to move some things out of the way. And if I go down here, you'll see here are a group of roving shifts. So they're the same neighborhood, but they're a different assortment of polling places that you would be driving to. You have 9 options that you can choose from. And then you hit the select a shift, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., whatever 2-hour shift suits your schedule, and you're good to go.
When do the polls close?
7 p.m.
Okay.
I'm 99. Hold on a second. Maybe is it 8? No, it's 7 p.m. Yeah. See the very last one that I've highlighted? It says 5 to 7. So that'll be the latest shift.
Okay.
And they usually say, sort of maybe not at 6, but more like 7 to 9, and then lunchtime, and then right after work are the busiest shifts. But this is really designed. We're grateful for your help, and whatever shifts you want to do, we are grateful for. And however many, whether it's 2 or 12, completely up to you. And when you go through this, you're gonna, you'll see like this moving around in it, that it's pretty straightforward. Just be sure to pick roving or single. And don't worry about putting in your time slot, because you're going to get a drop-down menu of the available time slots. So all you need to do is put in the date, which is April 4th. And you're going to get this all in the resource guide and the email. And you're also going to have this slideshow to refresh your memory with it. And of course, reach out to me anytime. So these are the things to plan for your shift. It's great if you have a charger in case you're using a lot on the jot form reporting things. You could bring your resource training guide, and make sure, I would say comfort over fashion for sure. It's important work, but it's not necessarily glamorous work. And definitely wear comfortable shoes, I would say. So these are the reporting options you have. We're going to go over the jot form in a minute, which is going to show you how to do a checklist, how the checklist is what it looks like on site. A voter interaction. If you have an encounter with a voter, and let's say you help them find their polling place, we want to know that you did that. And an incident is when there's actually kind of a problem. The voter says, they don't have me registered. I know I'm registered, or they told me I couldn't vote because I had a mail-in ballot. If it's an incident that involves some confusion or dispute that you can't resolve in that moment, that would be an incident. With an incident or any reason that you feel like you need an extra set of ears, you'd call Mary or Jay at these numbers. These are our cell numbers. And if for whatever reason you don't get through right away, we'll call you right back, or go ahead and call that 866 number. That is manned or personed all day. And, we all entered the same information. All the people who work on election protection all have access to that. So we keep each other informed. So I was just showing you the election protection form. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the common cause jotform.com, and don't worry, it's going to be in the things that I email you. So you can just click it from your computer or your phone if you want. And as I was showing you before, you put in your name. You don't even really have to put in your name, but it's good so that we know if we have any follow-up questions, who it was. Again, you put in like your polling place. So Murray School is where I vote. So I'm going next. Next. And then I'm going to do a checklist, because I'm a roving poll monitor and I just got to my first site and I want to see what it is. So you see here, all of these are pre-populated. Is it open on time, parking, disability access, atmosphere, lines, all of the stuff we just went over. So if there's any problems, you're going to be able to fill that in on the comment section. But you can, you put these in. Okay, it's for, sorry, I don't know why that keeps happening. So here I say, it was open late, I would just type in blah, 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 blah. It was open late and there was a very aggressive poll monitor, election volunteer, a campaign volunteer. And so once I put that in here, I go to next. And then I can choose whether I want to say something in a recording or upload a photo. You don't have to. And then you do next. And then you keep going and then you submit. So it's very simple, straightforward. Okay. No pressure about uploading photographs. And even if there's an issue that you want to describe that a photograph would help with, you can just use words to describe it. It's okay. But if you'd like to take photographs, you can. So that's the checklist for the exterior of a polling location. And a voter interaction will just look, oops, go back. Was it an issue with voter registration, voter ID? There was an issue where somebody wasn't able to get in because of disability, a polling place question, whatever it is, you check it, and then you're going to always have an opportunity to provide details there. Now, let's say you get there and there's an incident, okay? Let's say that there's somebody who is being intimidating and is not, nobody's sort of following up. I might at that part with the incident, before I fill this out, I might call Mary or Jay or the 866 number. If there's something that's kind of bowling, I just put the jot form. Hopefully you can get back to it another time. But the most important thing is that we try to troubleshoot right there in the moment if there's a real incident. So don't worry about the jot form if something is more timely, always time to get back to it. If you don't get back to it, it's not the end of the world, but we mostly want to make sure whoever what the incident was is resolved as soon as possible. So I just went over all of this. So I think I'll skip through these slides. These are just sort of screenshots of what we just did live. Any questions for me on this before I go?
So we basically are observers. And we aren't there to resolve a problem. We're not coming in to save the day. If we see something, we report it.
Correct, except let's say you are in you're a single site poll monitor, and so you're inside and you see somebody walk away not having been able to vote, okay? You're allowed to walk outside, and once you get past that 100-foot electioneering zone, you're allowed to say, hi, my name is, Phyllis. I'm a volunteer nonpartisan poll worker. It seemed you had some trouble back there. Is there anything I can help you with? Now, sometimes it's just as simple as finding out where the registration is and where their polling place is. And for whatever reason, they weren't able to get that information by the election worker, or they got frustrated. Or it might be something more significant, but you can always give them that 866 number and they can have a private conversation with somebody who's even trained more deeply and may even be, a lawyer who can really help with the situation. So you can solve, or another thing you're solving to save the day is, the door for disability access is locked. And so you call us. And we get on the phone and we get the Board of Elections to go and fix the situation. So you really are there to solve problems in real time, but you have to respect the roles of the election judge and the election worker, and you're not allowed to interact with the voter inside, only outside. Does that help, Phyllis?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Oh, here's a little test. Let's see if I can do it right. Let me just move this thing out of the way. I don't know if you can see what I can see, but some of the, there we go. Okay. So as a poll monitor, I can volunteer with other organizations, parties, or campaigns. What do you think the answer is?
No.
I'm going to guess no.
Everybody says no.
No.
It is maybe. You can't do it the day of the election.
Right.
But if you did it last week or next week, you can. You just can't do it that day. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Can you stay for a second shift?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we love it when you do that. Yay. Can you vote during your shift? Let's say you're a single, you go to your polling location to monitor.
No, right?
Meh. Yes, you can. So you can do the
Oh,
two
you
birds,
can?
one stone. Yeah. So if you end up wanting to, if that's the place you want to be, do your volunteer shift, you can.
Oh,
You know, you might want to plan to do it before your shift or after your shift, but you can definitely do it. Okay. Can you ask someone how they voted or suggest who to vote for?
No.
Correct. I was going to have to fire you all if you didn't get that one right. I'm just kidding. Oops, this one cheated. Can you distribute partisan material or ask voters to sign a petition?
No.
No. Right. Can you challenge a voter's eligibility to vote?
no.
No.
No. And see, this is one of the things that I was saying for some places, I don't hear any reports of this happening in Chicago yet, but in some places, poll monitors use their volunteer role to challenge people, and they're not supposed to. And that's part of this, this voter intimidation. So, no matter what you think, we have no right to challenge. That's the judge's responsibility to do. Can you engage in a confrontation with volunteers with other groups at the 100-foot line? No. Even if they drive you crazy, even if you think if there's a real problem, call us, we'll come. But not only do we not want you to do that because that's not the role of a poll monitor, we don't want you to do that because we want to make sure you're safe and we don't want you to get into confrontations. But that's why they pay me the big bucks, right? No. Just kidding. Okay, so remember, always contact your EP lead, or that's me or Jay, or as we said, the command center. If you have any questions, always remember it's nonpartisan, be our eyes and ears. We want to know what's going on, be respectful, be sure to bring PPE or any comfort items that you want. And when in doubt, we got the 866 number.
No, we'll have that on us, right? All of that.
Yeah. We used to have a lot of postcards. I think we're low on them, but I might have a few to give to you with the swag. So you have that right there. And it'll be in your resource guide that you can print out and have with you. So we've already gone through this a bit about the polling place kind of questions, registration, voter ID. It's all going to be in your resource guide. People get very surprised that they don't need an ID. The only time they're going to need an ID if they're registering on site same day. You can register to vote the same day as election day, and then you will need two forms of ID. And there's a link to what ID you have to bring, because that's your first time registering at that address. But if you're registered and you're in the book, you're good to go. If there is a debate and the poll monitor saying, the election judge is saying, your signature doesn't match, I don't think you can vote. If there's some dispute, you have to present one form of ID, okay, between you and the election judge. But if there's no dispute or no new registration, you don't need ID. So that's pretty great that we have that in Illinois.
Yeah.
Less frequent is stuff about, voting equipment failing, language challenges, but we have a great 866 number for that, and all the other things that we talked about. So most of your day, hopefully, will be with happy interactions being helpful to voters. But we're really thankful to have you out there if there are problems that need to be addressed. Okay. So here's an example. Am I at the right place to vote? Oh, well, let's check. And then you can click onto the link and check.
Now we can talk to them if we're outside or inside and somebody walks up to me and says, am I in the right place?
If I was inside and asked if I was in the right place, I would say, oh, please ask the election workers over there. And I would point to them. If I'm standing outside and I'm not in that 100-foot electioneering zone,
No.
Absolutely. Let's see, you want to see if you're in the right place? Then you can go and help them right there on the spot. But
So,
when you're inside, you should let the election workers do that.
so in general, you're like 2 hours. Would you kind of be going back and forth a little bit?
You can, I mean, you can leave and come back to go outside and see how things are outside and come back in.
Okay.
Yeah. So my experience in doing this kind of work is I went to actually Milwaukee for the November election, and you had to commit to the full day. So that was, as I was saying, 6 a.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Mhm.
And I just had to get up sometimes because I couldn't sit there, you know. But when I got there, I saw that it was signed well, like everything seemed to be in good order. There was never a long line. So, you know, after a while, I didn't feel like I had to keep checking outside, but I think you'll get the sense when you arrive, like, do I need to? Because you might see campaign volunteers who are a little too enthusiastic, or a missing sign or something like that. And, you know, you can approach the judge and say, you know, hi, you should introduce yourself. Here's my credential. You know, I just was wondering, do you know if that disability door is working? You know, is there anything I can do, whatever, to help? And then if it's not working, that's something you would report. But making sure, or you might come from outside and say to the election judge, I'm Linda, I'm a nonpartisan poll monitor, and I noticed that there's some very aggressive electioneering going on outside. I don't know if there's something you can do. Okay, so you give them an opportunity to respond, but you would not say anything to the voter or to the, and I would really refrain from saying anything to an aggressive electioneer person, because you don't know how they're going to respond. And we've said, you know, if you need to, if you feel comfortable, record it. But sometimes that puts you at risk when you record it, and it really escalates the situation. You know, because one form of electioneering, let's say, is somebody's shirt. And I can have a shirt that has a candidate on it or some kind of highly partisan message. You're not supposed to be able to wear that inside a polling place. If I'm in there, I don't want to jump up as soon as I see him and run to the judge, because probably that person maybe wants to instigate a reaction and cause a scene. So I would sit back and I would monitor what's going on and let the election judge handle it. But then I would let us know if the election judge decides to let it go or doesn't do anything. We might want to know to make sure that there's not a pattern of that happening at that polling location that is intimidating other people. But you don't want to, what's the cliche, fuel to the fire. Sometimes somebody behaves in that way because they're trying to instigate a response. And we are peace, love, freedom, happiness as much as we can be. We want to notice it, give the judge a chance to do her job, and report it on the jot form, or call us if you're concerned. Does that help?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, I just kind of answered this question, but let's see if you were listening. What happens if a potential voter isn't registered but wants to vote on election day?
Well, they're allowed, you
They're
said.
allowed. Mhm.
They just need some ID, so they need some forms of identification.
Right. They need 2 forms that are listed on the Board of Election site that you can easily access, or the other person can, and I'm sure the election judge will know. But no one should be turned away that they can't vote. And even if there's a dispute about any of that, they can always submit a provisional ballot. Now, we don't want them to have to, because to make the provisional ballot valid, they're going to have to go back within a week to verify it, okay, with the Board of Elections. But that's the last stop hope if needed. Okay. All right. So this is a link here about the ID requirements. And again, if you go to the link, and you'll have this in multiple formats, it's pretty clear. You need 0 forms for this, 1 form for this, and 2 forms. And then this will have a list of all the kinds of ID that's acceptable. And that'll be in your resource guide. So it'll be there for you to look at without having to go online. I get very nervous sometimes that I'm not going to remember everything. And I find that I remember more than I think I will after these kinds of trainings, but I like having the security of having the documents in case I forget or I want to double check. All right. So we know about electioneering, no electioneering within 100 feet. If a line extends beyond the flags, electioneering is not permitted even within 10 feet of that line. So again, I don't expect we're going to have long lines on the 4th, but let's say the line went back 200 feet. You're still not supposed to electioneer with people who are online, even if they're not in the electioneering free zone. Does that make sense?
No, could you say that in a different way, maybe?
Okay, so the general electioneering rule is you cannot approach voters in that 100 feet before the polling place. However, if the voting line of people waiting to vote extends beyond that 100, you're still not allowed to electioneer with them either, even though they're in the free zone, because they're voters. So you have to create that. Okay. Again, I think I mentioned this, voters with disabilities may request curbside voting. So they can skip the lines. Voters with disabilities or language access challenges can bring someone to help them. So let's say, you know, I'm half Armenian. Let's say my Armenian grandmother wants to vote, but she can't read English. I'm allowed to come with her and to explain what to do if there's a language issue. And you're going to get more specifics of this in the resource guide, because it's very rare that will come up. But if you do. So here's just, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's so important because you guys are all, you know, you're doers, you're here, you're volunteering, you'd like to help, you like to fix problems, but do not try to fix a problem of intimidation. Call the command center immediately. Make sure that happens. Disengage, go to a safe place, await further instructions. It might not be as dramatic as that, but just really want to, you know, things can escalate quickly if somebody has the mind for that. And we just want to make sure you're safe. You don't have to be a superhero.
And save the day.
Yeah, well, I know you want to, Phyllis, but you do in so many other ways, I'm sure. Got to get little capes. I think instead of the baseball hats, maybe we can have election protection capes, you know, like superhero capes.
Like that.
I'm gonna bring that up at a national meeting.
That's good.
Yeah, absentee ballot. You should expect questions about all of these things about we went over this earlier, that you're supposed to bring that mail-in ballot back and surrender it if you want to vote on election day. If you don't have it, you can still go and then either do a provisional ballot. And then sometimes they want to turn their ballot in because they don't want to put it in the post box, and they can do that as well.
Sorry,
They can turn it in that day.
Yes.
I know you spoke about this before, but if someone did get an absentee ballot in the mail but hadn't filled it out, are they only able to vote via provisional, or what was the other?
No, they just have to bring the ballot and turn it over. That's a check so that it's confirmed that they're not voting twice.
So if they don't bring the ballot with them, though,
If they don't, then they have to do a provisional.
provisional. Okay,
Right.
got it.
And it's listed in their book that they had an absentee ballot, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we've had this extreme lines broken. If I would love extreme lines in Chicago one day. No, I'm kidding. I don't really, but I just like to get that voter turnout up. If you're hearing poll workers giving out wrong information, again, don't confront anybody, but, you know, let us know, and then we'll take it from there. Multiple voters reporting they're not on the rolls. Again, that's that pattern thing. Like if you see one person who's saying they're not on the rolls, but all of a sudden it's 2, 3, 4, 5, we want to know in case there's a systemic issue. If you get there early bird and it's not open, we want to know immediately. Unfortunately, some of the polling places you're going to go to aren't going to be very physically accessible. We probably know about that because there's a rating system for that. But if you're concerned, let us know. And any other problems that come up. So here we go. The final recap and reminders. It's nonpartisan. I know you know that. Our coalition aims to serve every eligible voter, no matter who they are, who they want to vote for, we are there to promote democracy and the right to vote. Poll monitors are an essential part of this program. In fact, you are the eyes and ears, and any policy or any advocacy effort that's not informed by what's happening on the ground is not effective. And so we are grateful for you to be there, not only to help voters, but to help us do work that matters. And all poll monitors should prioritize your safety. Whatever reason you feel uncomfortable, do not worry. You need to be safe. Oh my gosh, there's a cute little kitty cat. Mine has stayed away, which I can't believe it. When in doubt, call. Here's the information. Contact me beforehand if you need to. Oh, this is, wait, where'd it go? This is my favorite slide. I made it up. Remember, a boring shift is a good shift. It can be frustrating when you volunteer and nothing happens, but that means everything's working and there are no problems and people aren't being disenfranchised. So if it's boring, yay, go democracy, go Chicago Board of Elections, go everybody. Bravo. I was very bored when I volunteered for 14 and a half hours, but it made me feel so proud about our democracy and how we do things. So if you're bored, I hope you have that warm, fuzzy feeling too. And at that, this is the end of the training. So are there any questions or anything else you have that I can help with?
So I just realized when I looked at my calendar, of course, that I had something in the morning. So when do we have to decide on our shifts?
You can decide on your shifts all the way up until the day before.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And, like I said, all the shifts, they're in 1 hour, 2 hour increments. What I mean by 1 hour, 2 hour, it goes 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 2 hours from whatever time you start. So you have a lot of flexibility. Okay.
Okay.
So hold on just 1 second. I'm going to stop the share. And I'm going to stop the recording and thank everybody for coming. Thank you very much. And reach out anytime. And